Imagine building a career around being the calmest person in the room. Every morning, millions of people welcome you into their homes before they've even finished their first cup of coffee. They trust your voice to deliver breaking news, celebrate historic moments, and guide them through national tragedies. To them, you become a symbol of consistency, a reassuring presence that somehow never seems to falter. But what if, behind that familiar smile, your own world was quietly falling apart? There came a moment when one of America's most recognizable broadcasters walked into a doctor's office expecting an ordinary appointment. Minutes later, she walked out carrying news that could have ended not only her career, but her life. For many people, it would have marked the beginning of a long retreat from the public eye. Instead, she returned to work. Years later, after surviving that first battle, an even more devastating diagnosis arrived. This time, the odds were far more uncertain. The treatment would require months away from television, complete physical isolation, and a fight that depended not only on modern medicine but on the extraordinary generosity of someone willing to give a part of themselves so she could live. Most stories about success celebrate the moment someone reaches the top. This one asks a different question. What happens after you've achieved everything you once dreamed of, and life still demands more than you ever imagined giving? Robin Roberts is often introduced by her awards, her record-breaking television career, or the millions of viewers who have started their mornings with her for decades. Those achievements deserve recognition. But they are only part of the story. Because the real measure of her life isn't found in television ratings or career milestones. It's found in the ordinary decisions she made on the hardest days imaginable, choosing honesty over fear, purpose over self-pity, and hope over despair. This is the story of a woman who discovered that true strength isn't revealed when everything is going well. It's revealed when life gives you every reason to stop, and you decide to keep showing up anyway. Long before millions of Americans recognized her face each morning, Robin Roberts was simply a young girl growing up along Mississippi's Gulf Coast, in a town where reputation wasn't built through publicity, it was built through character. Pass Christian was the kind of place where neighbors knew one another, where values traveled through generations, and where children learned early that hard work spoke louder than promises. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't a place that predicted national television careers. Yet, in many ways, it became the perfect classroom for the woman Robin would eventually become. Her parents shaped that foundation in very different but equally powerful ways. Her father, Lawrence Roberts, carried a remarkable history of his own. As one of the original Tuskegee Airmen, he belonged to a generation that challenged barriers not through speeches, but through excellence. Flying military missions during World War II demanded extraordinary skill. Doing so while confronting discrimination demanded even greater resolve. Those experiences influenced how he raised his children. Inside the Roberts household, discipline wasn't viewed as punishment. It was respect, for yourself, your family, and the opportunities others had fought to make possible. Excuses rarely found a place at the dinner table. Preparation mattered. Commitment mattered. Finishing what you started mattered even more. Robin absorbed those lessons without realizing how often life would ask her to rely on them. Her mother, Lucy Marion Roberts, offered a different kind of strength. Where Lawrence emphasized discipline, Lucy Marion embodied quiet faith. She believed kindness could coexist with determination, and compassion never weakened resilience. Friends and family often remembered her steady presence, the kind of person who could calm a room without raising her voice. More than anything, she repeated a simple phrase that would remain with Robin for decades. Everybody has something. It wasn't meant to dismiss pain or minimize hardship. It was a reminder that struggle belongs to every life. Some burdens are visible. Others remain hidden. Comparing suffering serves little purpose because every person eventually carries challenges they never expected. The real question isn't whether hardship arrives. It's how you choose to respond when it does. Robin would spend the rest of her life proving the power of that philosophy. As the youngest of 4 children, she grew up surrounded by older siblings who naturally became examples, competitors, and supporters all at once. Their home encouraged achievement, but not perfection. Mistakes were accepted as long as they became lessons rather than excuses. Sports quickly became Robin's favorite classroom. Basketball captured her imagination first, but she refused to limit herself. Tennis, track and field, and other competitions filled much of her childhood. She loved the challenge as much as the victories. Winning felt rewarding, but improving felt even better. Every practice reinforced habits that couldn't be taught from a textbook. Wake up early. Prepare thoroughly. Trust your teammates. Recover quickly after failure. Show up again tomorrow. Without realizing it, she was rehearsing for a career that would eventually demand those exact qualities under far greater pressure. Athletics also revealed something that teachers and coaches noticed almost immediately. Robin possessed unusual composure. Some athletes became overwhelmed during important moments. Others let mistakes linger in their minds until the next play slipped away as well. Robin developed a different instinct. Once the game resumed, her attention returned completely to what came next. It wasn't emotional detachment. It was focus. Years later, television producers would describe the same quality while watching her handle breaking news on live broadcasts. Unexpected developments rarely disrupted her calm because she had been training that mindset since childhood, even if she didn't recognize it at the time. After graduating from high school, Robin accepted a basketball scholarship to Southeastern Louisiana University. For many students, college represents the first major step toward independence. For Robin, it became something even larger. It was where 2 different parts of her identity finally began moving toward one another. On one side stood the athlete. On the other stood the communicator. She continued competing at a high level with the Lady Lions basketball team, embracing the demanding schedule that balanced practices, travel, academics, and constant preparation. The discipline required to succeed reinforced habits that had already become second nature. At the same time, another interest quietly gained momentum. Communications. Robin enjoyed storytelling almost as much as competition. She found herself fascinated not only by major events but by the people behind them, their motivations, struggles, and decisions. While many classmates dreamed of becoming famous broadcasters, Robin focused on becoming a dependable one. She wasn't chasing celebrity. She wanted credibility. That difference would define nearly every stage of her career. By the time she earned her communications degree in 1983, she had acquired something more valuable than technical knowledge. She understood preparation. She understood teamwork. She understood pressure. Most importantly, she understood consistency. Those qualities rarely attract headlines. They aren't dramatic enough to become inspirational posters or viral social media quotes. Yet they often separate careers that last a few years from careers that influence generations. Robin couldn't possibly know where life would take her next. She couldn't foresee the awards, the record-breaking broadcasts, or the interviews that millions would eventually watch. She also couldn't imagine the hospital rooms, frightening diagnoses, or impossible decisions waiting decades ahead. But the foundation had already been built. Long before national television introduced Robin Roberts to America, a small town on Mississippi's Gulf Coast had quietly introduced her to resilience. And that resilience was about to meet its first real test, not in front of millions of viewers, but inside the unpredictable world of local television, where every opportunity had to be earned and every promotion demanded starting over somewhere new. Success rarely arrives all at once. For Robin Roberts, it came one small television station at a time. After graduating from Southeastern Louisiana University in 1983, she wasn't handed a national audience or welcomed into a major network. Like thousands of aspiring broadcasters before her, she entered an industry where experience mattered more than ambition, and where every promotion had to be earned from the ground up. Her first newsroom was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. The station was small. Resources were limited. Everyone wore multiple hats. One day might begin with covering a city council meeting, continue with writing scripts in a cramped newsroom, and end with anchoring the evening broadcast. There was little glamour, but there was something far more valuable. Repetition. Every assignment sharpened her instincts. Every mistake became tomorrow's lesson. Every broadcast made her slightly more comfortable speaking to people she had never met. Unlike larger markets, there was no room to hide behind production teams or expensive technology. Local television demanded authenticity because viewers could immediately recognize when someone wasn't being themselves. Robin never had that problem. The warmth audiences would later associate with her national career wasn't something she learned under studio lights. It already existed. Local television simply gave it somewhere to grow. As opportunities appeared, she kept moving. Mississippi led to another station along the Gulf Coast. Then came Nashville. Then Atlanta. Each move represented more than a bigger paycheck. Every new city meant building credibility from scratch. New coworkers. New audiences. New expectations. Many talented broadcasters struggled during these transitions because they try to reinvent themselves. Robin did the opposite. Wherever she went, she remained remarkably consistent. She prepared obsessively. She treated camera operators with the same respect as executives. She listened more than she spoke. Most importantly, she never allowed growing confidence to become arrogance. People noticed. Not because she demanded attention. Because she earned trust. That distinction would eventually become the defining characteristic of her career. By the late 1980s, another opportunity appeared, one that seemed almost perfectly suited to her background. ESPN. Sports broadcasting was changing rapidly, but it remained overwhelmingly male. Women were often expected to specialize in lighter features or sideline interviews rather than serious sports journalism. Black women faced even steeper barriers. Robin entered that environment without trying to prove she belonged. She simply did the work. Night after night, viewers watched someone who knew the games inside and out. Basketball wasn't just another assignment, it had been part of her own life for years. She understood athletes because she had been one. She recognized pressure because she had lived it. That authenticity couldn't be manufactured. It became her greatest advantage. Over the next 15 years, Robin covered nearly every major sporting event imaginable. Professional basketball. Professional football. College athletics. Grand Slam tennis. Olympic competition. Championship celebrations. Heartbreaking defeats. Every assignment taught the same lesson in different ways. Sports are never only about winning. They're about preparation. Sacrifice. Failure. Redemption. Human emotion compressed into moments that can change lives forever. Robin learned to tell those stories with empathy instead of spectacle. Athletes quickly realized they weren't speaking with someone searching for controversy. They were speaking with someone genuinely interested in understanding what victory and defeat actually felt like. Viewers recognized that difference too. Instead of placing herself at the center of every broadcast, Robin consistently placed the story first. Ironically, that's exactly what made audiences remember her. As her reputation continued growing, executives at ABC began paying attention. In 1995, they invited Robin to contribute occasional reports to Good Morning America. At first, it wasn't intended to transform her career. She was simply another talented journalist joining an already successful program. But television has a unique way of revealing chemistry that can't be predicted. The moment Robin appeared on screen, something clicked. Audiences responded almost immediately. There was an ease about her conversations that felt genuine rather than rehearsed. Whether she was interviewing world leaders, musicians, actors, athletes, or ordinary families experiencing extraordinary moments, she approached everyone with the same quiet curiosity. She wasn't trying to dominate interviews. She was trying to understand people. That approach accomplished something increasingly rare in television. Guests relaxed. Instead of delivering polished talking points, they often revealed something more personal. Viewers sensed those moments. Trust began accumulating slowly. One interview. One morning. 1 year at a time. Robin continued balancing responsibilities at both ESPN and ABC for several years, an exhausting schedule that demanded extraordinary discipline. While others might have viewed the workload as unsustainable, she approached it like an athlete managing a long season. Preparation became routine. Sleep became precious. Consistency remained non-negotiable. Eventually, the decision became clear. Her future belonged at Good Morning America. In 2005, Robin Roberts officially became co-anchor of the program. It was one of the highest-profile positions in American television. Millions of viewers now started each weekday with someone who had spent more than 2 decades quietly earning every opportunity she received. Yet something even more remarkable happened over the years that followed. People stopped thinking of Robin as merely a television personality. She became part of their daily routine. Families watched while eating breakfast. Parents listened while getting children ready for school. Workers kept the television on before heading to the office. Without realizing it, viewers invited Robin into some of the most ordinary moments of their lives. That kind of relationship cannot be created through marketing. It can only be earned through years of reliability. By 2012, Good Morning America achieved something few industry experts thought possible. After 16 consecutive years of trailing its biggest competitor, the program finally became America's most watched morning show. For everyone involved, it was the reward for years of relentless effort. The newsroom celebrated. Executives celebrated. Viewers celebrated. It should have been one of the happiest periods of Robin Roberts' professional life. And in many ways, it was. But sometimes life's greatest triumphs arrive standing beside its greatest challenges. Just as Robin reached the very peak of her broadcasting career, an invisible battle was already beginning inside her own body. Within months, the woman millions depended upon each morning would face a diagnosis that no amount of preparation, professionalism, or experience could make easier. For the first time in decades, showing up would require far more than simply walking into a television studio. Success has a way of convincing us that life is finally settling into place. By the mid-2000s, Robin Roberts had reached a point many broadcasters spend entire careers chasing. She was no longer climbing the ladder, she had become one of the faces of American morning television. Every day followed a familiar rhythm. Wake before sunrise. Prepare for the broadcast. Interview presidents, athletes, entertainers, and everyday people with stories that deserve to be heard. Then do it all again the next morning. From the outside, it looked like stability. Behind the scenes, it was the product of relentless discipline. The early alarms, the endless preparation, the pressure of live television, Robin embraced it because she loved the work. After years of local newsrooms, sports arenas, and national broadcasts, she had finally found where she belonged. Then one routine appointment changed everything. In the summer of 2007, a regular mammogram produced results that no one hopes to hear. Breast cancer. It is difficult to describe what happens in the moments after a diagnosis like that. Time seems to slow down. Plans that once stretched comfortably into the future suddenly become uncertain. Conversations shift from upcoming projects to treatment options. Priorities reorganize themselves almost instantly. For someone whose career depended on consistency, the uncertainty was perhaps the hardest part. Would she still be able to work? Would viewers see her differently? Could she continue living the life she had spent decades building? Those questions had no immediate answers. But one decision came surprisingly quickly. Robin chose honesty. In an era when many public figures preferred to keep serious illnesses private until treatment was complete, she decided to tell her audience herself. No anonymous statements. No carefully timed press releases. No attempt to hide the truth until it became impossible to ignore. She sat at the same desk where millions of Americans expected their morning news and shared the reality of what she was facing. The announcement wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. Its power came from its sincerity. She acknowledged the fear, explained the diagnosis, and assured viewers that she intended to fight it with everything she had. For many watching at home, something remarkable happened. The distance between television personality and audience disappeared. Robin wasn't simply reporting someone else's story anymore. She was living one. That honesty created an unexpected ripple effect. Doctors and advocacy organizations would later note increased public attention surrounding breast cancer awareness and screening. Women who had postponed mammograms began scheduling appointments. Families started conversations they had been avoiding. Others undergoing treatment suddenly felt less alone, seeing someone they admired navigating the same frightening uncertainty. Robin never claimed to be a medical expert. She simply demonstrated what openness could accomplish. Treatment began soon afterward. A lumpectomy. Radiation therapy. Regular medical appointments. Physical exhaustion. There were days when the effects of treatment were impossible to ignore. Fatigue settled in differently than ordinary tiredness. Recovery became its own full-time responsibility. Yet through much of that period, Robin continued working. Not because she wanted sympathy. Not because television demanded it. Because maintaining a sense of normalcy became part of her recovery. Each morning she walked back into the studio, she quietly challenged one of the most common assumptions about serious illness, that life must completely stop until healing is finished. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when simply getting out of bed required determination. But years of athletic training had taught her something medicine alone couldn't provide. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes success means completing today's challenge, even if today's challenge is smaller than yesterday's. Professional athletes understand this instinctively. Recovery happens one practice at a time. Championships are built through ordinary routines repeated over months and years. Robin approached cancer the same way. Focus on today. Complete today's treatment. Show up if you can. Rest when you must. Then begin again tomorrow. Her coworkers noticed the quiet determination long before viewers did. Behind the cameras, they watched someone balancing fear with professionalism in ways that rarely became public. Makeup artists, producers, camera operators, and fellow anchors witnessed both the visible and invisible costs of continuing to work while undergoing treatment. What impressed them wasn't stubbornness. It was perspective. Robin never behaved as though she were the only person carrying burdens. She continued asking co-workers about their families, celebrating their successes, listening to their concerns. Even while fighting her own battle, she somehow remained interested in everyone else's. Perhaps that was one reason audiences trusted her so deeply. Empathy had never been something she switched on for television. It was simply who she was. Months passed. Gradually, treatment ended. Medical reports became more encouraging. Life began resembling something familiar again. When doctors confirmed she had completed therapy, there was understandable relief. Family members celebrated. Friends celebrated. Viewers celebrated. Robin herself allowed a cautious optimism to return. She spoke openly about the importance of early detection, encouraging others to learn from her experience rather than fear it. If sharing her diagnosis convinced even one person to seek medical care sooner, then something meaningful had emerged from an otherwise painful chapter. That mindset revealed an important part of her character. She refused to let suffering exist without purpose. Pain, in her view, should leave behind something useful. Hope. Awareness. Encouragement. A reason for someone else to keep going. As the months turned into years, Robin resumed the pace of a demanding national television career. Good Morning America continued gaining momentum, interviews filled her schedule once again, and the future slowly regained its familiar shape. It seemed reasonable to believe the hardest chapter had ended. After all, she had fought cancer. She had recovered. She had returned stronger than before. Most people would have considered that enough for one lifetime. Robin did too. But hidden beneath that hopeful return was something no one, not even her doctors during those early months, could fully predict. The very treatment that had helped save her life had carried an extremely rare long-term risk. Years after defeating breast cancer, another illness had already begun developing quietly inside her bone marrow. This time, the battle ahead would be unlike anything she had faced before. It wouldn't test only her strength. It would test her faith, her family, and the very meaning of hope itself. There is a quiet assumption that follows every survivor. Once the treatment ends. Once the scans look clear. Once life begins to resemble normal again. The hardest part must be over. Robin Roberts believed that too. 5 years had passed since her breast cancer diagnosis. She had rebuilt her routine, returned to the anchor desk, and continued doing what she loved most. Good Morning America was stronger than ever, and after years of relentless effort, the program stood on the verge of making television history. Then came one of the most extraordinary days of her professional career. In the summer of 2012, ratings confirmed what Robin and her colleagues had spent years working toward. Good Morning America had become America's most watched morning program, ending a 16-year streak held by its longtime competitor. Inside the newsroom, it felt like validation. Countless early mornings. Thousands of broadcasts. Years of preparation. Everything had led to this moment. For any broadcaster, it should have been a day remembered only for celebration. Instead, Robin would remember it for something else entirely. During routine follow-up testing, doctors discovered that something wasn't right. Her blood counts had become increasingly abnormal. More tests followed. Then consultations. Then another conversation no one ever wants to have. Robin had developed myelodysplastic syndrome, commonly called MDS, a rare disease affecting the bone marrow's ability to produce healthy blood cells. Unlike breast cancer, this wasn't a battle that could simply be managed around a demanding work schedule. This was different. The disease had likely developed as a rare long-term complication of the chemotherapy that had helped save her life years earlier. It was a cruel irony. The treatment that gave her more time had unknowingly created another challenge waiting years in the future. Doctors explained the reality carefully. Without aggressive treatment, the disease could continue progressing. The best chance for recovery would require something far more complex than surgery or radiation. A bone marrow transplant. Robin understood immediately what that meant. Months away from television. Isolation. An immune system reduced almost completely before it could be rebuilt. There would be no balancing treatments with a broadcast schedule this time. The life she had carefully reconstructed after breast cancer would once again be placed on hold. And once again, she chose honesty. She looked into the same cameras that had followed her journey years earlier and explained what was happening. Not because she owed the public every detail of her private life, but because she believed openness could accomplish something bigger than herself. Within hours of her announcement, something extraordinary happened. Across the country, people who had never considered becoming bone marrow donors began researching how they could help. Registration numbers surged. Families started conversations around dinner tables. Communities organized donor drives. Thousands of complete strangers, inspired by someone they had welcomed into their homes every morning, decided they wanted to give another person a chance to live. Robin couldn't have predicted that response. She wasn't trying to lead a campaign. She was simply telling the truth. Yet truth has a remarkable way of inspiring action. Fortunately, Robin wouldn't need to wait for a stranger. Testing revealed that her older sister, Sally Ann Roberts, was a compatible donor. Sometimes the most profound acts of love aren't dramatic. They aren't accompanied by speeches or grand gestures. Sometimes they're as simple as saying yes. For Sally Ann, there was never a difficult decision to make. Family wasn't measured by convenience. It was measured by commitment. Years earlier, their parents had taught their children to stand beside one another when life became difficult. Now those lessons carried life-saving consequences. While doctors prepared for the transplant, another heartbreaking chapter unfolded. Robin stepped away from Good Morning America in September 2012. For the first time in decades, mornings arrived without her familiar greeting. Viewers noticed the empty chair. Her colleagues felt the absence. But no one experienced that silence more deeply than Robin herself. For someone whose identity had been built around showing up every day, being unable to work became its own emotional challenge. Hospital rooms operate on a different schedule than television studios. There are no countdown clocks. No producers. No commercial breaks. Only waiting. Waiting for blood counts. Waiting for test results. Waiting for medications to work. Waiting for tomorrow. Then life delivered another devastating blow. As Robin prepared for the transplant, her mother, Lucimarian Roberts, passed away. The woman whose quiet wisdom had shaped every chapter of Robin's life would never see her youngest daughter return home from this fight. Grief arrived before healing had even begun. For many people, that combination might have been unbearable. Illness. Isolation. Uncertainty. Loss. All at once. Yet even inside that unimaginable season, Robin often returned to the words she had heard throughout childhood. Everybody has something. For years, that sentence had sounded like simple advice. Now it became something deeper. It became perspective. Her mother had never promised life would be fair. She had never suggested faith removed suffering. Instead, she taught that hardship was part of the human experience, not evidence that hope had disappeared. That belief carried Robin through days when physical strength alone wasn't enough. The transplant itself demanded extraordinary courage. Doctors first had to weaken her existing immune system so her sister's healthy bone marrow could begin creating new blood cells. Recovery wouldn't happen overnight. There would be setbacks, complications, moments of uncertainty. Progress would be measured in tiny victories that most people never think about. A stable blood count. A successful test. One more day without infection. Each small improvement became another reason to believe tomorrow might be better. For the first time in her adult life, Robin couldn't solve problems through preparation or determination. She couldn't work harder than the disease. She couldn't outpractice it. She couldn't simply decide to be stronger. She had to trust other people. Doctors, nurses, researchers, family, friends, faith. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do isn't fighting harder. It's allowing themselves to be helped. Weeks gradually became months. Her body slowly accepted the transplant. Recovery remained difficult, but hope became increasingly realistic. Then, on February 20, 2013, a familiar figure walked through the doors of the Good Morning America studio once again. There were no fireworks. No dramatic entrance. No lengthy speech celebrating survival. Robin simply returned to the desk where millions of viewers had watched her for years. Her colleagues struggled to hold back tears. The audience watching from home celebrated with her. After everything she had endured, the diagnoses, the treatments, the transplant, and the loss of her mother, she smiled warmly into the camera. Then she spoke the two words that suddenly carried far greater meaning than ever before. Good morning. To most viewers, it sounded like a greeting. To those who had followed her journey, it sounded like victory. Not because every struggle had disappeared, but because she had proven something far more powerful. The hardest battles don't always change who we are. Sometimes they reveal who we've been all along. For many public figures, surviving a life-threatening illness becomes the defining chapter of their story. For Robin Roberts, it became the beginning of an entirely different one. When she returned to Good Morning America in 2013, viewers noticed something that couldn't be measured by television ratings or awards. She was still the same trusted journalist they had welcomed into their homes for years, but there was a new depth behind every conversation. She listened differently. She spoke differently. And perhaps most importantly, she understood something that only people who have stood at the edge of losing everything truly understand. Every ordinary day is extraordinary. The mornings that once blended together now carried new meaning. The familiar walk into the studio. The conversations with producers before the cameras rolled. The laughter shared with coworkers between commercial breaks. The opportunity to simply say, "Good morning." None of it felt ordinary anymore. It felt like a gift. That perspective began influencing nearly every aspect of her life. Robin had always valued privacy, carefully separating her public career from her personal relationships. While millions of viewers knew her as one of America's most recognizable broadcasters, relatively few knew about the woman who had quietly stood beside her through every frightening diagnosis, every difficult treatment, and every uncertain night. Her name was Amber Laign. For years, Amber had been Robin's greatest source of support away from the television cameras. While audiences saw the composed broadcaster each morning, Amber witnessed everything the public never did: the fear before medical appointments, the exhaustion after treatments, and the emotional weight that comes from wondering whether life will ever feel normal again. Some relationships are built during life's easiest moments. Others are tested by its hardest. Robin and Amber's relationship belonged firmly in the second category. In late 2013, Robin publicly acknowledged their relationship while expressing gratitude for the people who had carried her through recovery. There was no elaborate announcement or media spectacle. It was simply an honest acknowledgement of someone who had quietly been there all along. The response reflected how deeply audiences respected her authenticity. People didn't admire Robin because she tried to appear perfect. They admired her because she consistently appeared genuine. That same authenticity continued shaping the years that followed. Professionally, Robin remained one of the most respected journalists in American television. She interviewed presidents, world leaders, actors, musicians, athletes, and ordinary individuals whose stories deserved national attention. But if you looked closely, something subtle had changed. Her interviews became even more personal. Not intrusive. Not sensational. Personal. Having experienced profound uncertainty herself, Robin seemed to recognize it in others almost immediately. Guests often found themselves sharing thoughts they hadn't expected to reveal. Emotional conversations unfolded naturally because they sensed they were speaking with someone who truly understood vulnerability. Experience had transformed empathy into one of her greatest professional strengths. Then life presented another unexpected test. Years after helping Robin through 2 life-threatening illnesses, Amber received devastating news of her own. Breast cancer. The roles suddenly reversed. The caregiver became the patient. The survivor became the supporter. For Robin, the diagnosis reopened memories she knew all too well. The waiting. The fear. The uncertainty that accompanies every doctor's appointment. The hope that each new test result brings better news than the last. This time, however, she stood on the opposite side of the hospital bed. She understood exactly what recovery demanded because she had lived it herself. The long days. The emotional exhaustion. The quiet moments when encouragement matters more than answers. Just as Amber had once remained beside Robin without hesitation, Robin remained beside Amber through treatment and recovery. It became another reminder that resilience is rarely an individual achievement. Behind almost every remarkable survivor stands someone willing to carry hope when hope becomes difficult to carry alone. Thankfully, Amber recovered. Together, they entered a new chapter, not defined by illness, but by gratitude. In 2023, after nearly 2 decades together, Robin Roberts and Amber Laign were married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. It wasn't the beginning of their love story. It was the celebration of one that had already survived almost everything life could throw at it. Their marriage represented something quietly powerful. Not perfection. Endurance. Trust built over years instead of moments. The willingness to keep choosing one another long after life's greatest tests had arrived. Away from the headlines, Robin also continued supporting causes that had become deeply personal. Cancer awareness. Bone marrow donor registration. Health education. She understood that public influence carried responsibility. If sharing her own experiences encouraged even a handful of people to schedule screenings earlier, register as donors, or seek treatment before it was too late, then every difficult conversation had been worthwhile. Her impact stretched far beyond television. Countless people who never met Robin Roberts personally still credit her story with changing decisions that ultimately changed lives. Some finally scheduled mammograms. Others joined donor registries. Many simply found the strength to continue through illnesses, grief, or hardships of their own. That may be the most remarkable part of her legacy. It isn't confined to awards displayed in glass cases or career milestones recorded in broadcasting history. Its evidence exists in hospital waiting rooms. Family conversations. Acts of kindness between strangers. People who decided not to give up because someone else's story reminded them they weren't alone. Today, Robin Roberts continues doing what she has done for decades. She walks into the studio before sunrise. She prepares. She listens. She asks thoughtful questions. She greets millions of viewers with the same warmth that first earned their trust years ago. To many people, it looks effortless. But those who know her journey understand something different. Every morning she appears on television is a quiet reminder that life offers no guarantees. Health can change unexpectedly. Careers can shift overnight. The people we love can disappear far sooner than we ever imagine. Knowing that doesn't make life frightening. It makes it precious. Perhaps that is the lesson Robin Roberts has been teaching all along. Not through speeches. Not through inspirational slogans. But through thousands of ordinary mornings lived with extraordinary gratitude. When people ask how she managed to overcome so many seemingly impossible challenges, the answer isn't found in a single dramatic moment of courage. It was built over a lifetime. In the discipline her father demanded. In the compassion her mother modeled. In the teamwork she learned through sports. In the honesty she chose during her darkest seasons. And in the simple decision, made again and again, that no matter what yesterday brought, today was still worth showing up for. That may never become the most famous lesson in television history. But it might be one of the most important. Because every person, sooner or later, faces a morning they never wanted to see. A diagnosis. A loss. A disappointment. A season where hope feels painfully distant. Robin Roberts' story doesn't promise those mornings will disappear. It offers something far more realistic. The reminder that we can still rise to meet them. Not perfectly. Not fearlessly. But faithfully. And sometimes, that is more than enough. If there is one reason Robin Roberts continues to inspire millions after all these years, it isn't because she conquered every obstacle placed before her. It's because she never allowed those obstacles to decide who she would become. Her greatest achievement was never simply surviving. It was choosing, day after day, to transform survival into service, and reminding the rest of us that no matter how difficult yesterday may have been, every new morning still carries the possibility of hope. History has a way of remembering people for their biggest accomplishments. The awards. The records. The milestones that can be measured. Robin Roberts has earned all of those. She has interviewed presidents, covered history as it unfolded, helped lead one of America's most successful morning programs, and inspired millions through decades of journalism. But if you ask what truly defines her legacy, the answer isn't found inside a television studio. It's found in hospital rooms where frightened patients decided they weren't ready to give up. It's found in families who scheduled a medical screening because her story reminded them not to wait. It's found in bone marrow registries that welcomed new donors after she shared one of the most vulnerable moments of her life. And it's found in the countless ordinary mornings when someone facing their own private battle looked at the television, saw Robin Roberts smiling back at them, and quietly believed they could make it through one more day. Life tested her more than once. It challenged her health, her strength, her faith, and her heart. Yet every chapter of that journey pointed to the same simple truth. Our greatest victories are rarely the moments when everything goes according to plan. They are the moments when life falls apart, and we choose to move forward anyway. Perhaps that's why Robin Roberts has remained one of America's most trusted voices for so many years. Not because she convinced people that life would always be easy. But because she showed, through her own example, that hope can survive even the hardest seasons. And sometimes, the most courageous thing any of us can do isn't changing the world overnight. Sometimes. It's simply showing up for another morning.